This is my turkey. His name is Tom. I'm not very creative with names. He sleeps outside because this chicken coop isn't big enough for him. Okay. I built this chicken coop about 2 years ago, and at the time it was perfectly fine because I only had 9 chickens. This is one of them. But now I've got 20 chickens, 3 turkeys and 2 geese, so this is entirely too small now. What I could do is build a simple... What I could do is build a simple no-frills addition to this coop to make it big enough to house all the extra birds that I have. But that's entirely too not complicated enough. So what I'm going to do instead is build an entirely new chicken coop, this time much bigger and with vastly more features than this one. Join me. Each section of the frame is going to look roughly like this piece here. And by roughly, I mean almost exactly. This is my test piece. These parts are all cut to length, but they're still just rough 2x3 construction lumber. So to make alignment easier in the future, I'm going to run them all through the jointer. I'm going to joint one face and one edge of each board. And then I'll trim them down to a uniform size of 1 1/4 by 2 inches at the table saw. Joinery. These frame bits are going to be held together using butt joints. But butt joints aren't very strong on their own. They need some reinforcement. On this test piece that I made up earlier, I reinforced these butt joints with 2 1/2-inch dowels. But I didn't very much enjoy the process of doing that. The 1/2-inch drill bit, in combination with this very soft construction lumber, liked to suddenly grab, which either destroyed the board or my wrist, which led me to consider many different alternative methods of joinery reinforcement. I considered using dominoes, but I don't have a domino. I considered mortise and tenon joints, but that would be fiddly and annoying to set up. I even considered dowels, but that was the original problem I was trying to solve in the first place, so I don't know why I had this idea. Instead, I put the CNC router to work and ended up with this board of many things. There's a template down here and tons of inlays. I'll show you how I intend to use these in a second, but first, I need to break all of these out of the board. Here's how this is going to work. I've got my 2 pieces that are going to touch butts, and I've got my template here. This is not the one you just saw me pop out of the sheet. That one was this one right here, but I improved the design quite substantially by adding these pockets in it for alignment and changing everything else about it. This template snaps on top of these 2 pieces using the alignment grooves to, well, align them. And those alignment grooves are quite tight, so it keeps the 2 pieces square to each other. Now I can route out this dog bone shape using a hinge mortising bit on the router with a flush trim bearing. Now that my jacket is 90% sawdust, I can remove the template. Rub some glue on its butt for good measure. You can never have too much glue on your butt. And then glue in the inlay piece, so I don't have to use any clamps. Now, if I wanted to go the extra mile, I could put this dog bone inlay on both sides of the joint, but since I just put pins in there, I'd have to route through those pins, and I'm not going to do that. Now I just have to do that same thing 500 more times, and my frame will be done. Well, now it's too cold outside, so I had to bring the geese inside. The other birds are fine, but these 2 waddly idiots can't make it into the chicken coop. What's more, they don't like me calling them waddly idiots. What's more is that they won't go inside the little heated hut that I made for them, so it's too cold outside for them, and I brought them inside in a tent. Say hi, waddly idiots. They never shut up. Now, how do I connect all these framey bits? Well, you know how I just poo-pooed mortise and tenons for being fiddly and annoying? I'm going to use mortise and tenons. And to help me with this task, I've once again employed the CNC router. And I used it to make this. This is a mortising template with alignment pockets cut into the back, so it snaps onto the frame sections for ease and repeatability. As for the tenons, well, first I have to dimension down my raw construction lumber. And because I want you to feel my pain, I'm going to make you watch me process every single board.
What? You didn't think I was going to make you watch all that in real time, did you? I'm unusual, but I'm not cruel.
To cut the tendons on the end of all these boards, I again employed the CNC router, this time with a vertical clamping table. Here's those frame bits all assembled. And 3 months have passed. These dog bone inlay joints, while they were a fun experiment, didn't quite turn out how I'd hoped. For one, the tolerances weren't tight enough to keep these joints in line and square while the glue dried. And the template that I used to route out these pockets kept wearing out and I had to keep making new ones. This was partially because it relied on the bearing on the router bit, and that bearing was kind of hard on the templates, but mostly because I kept clipping the template with the router bit itself when I plunged down. So if I had to do it again, instead of making the template rely on the bearing on the router bit itself, I would use a bushing on the router base. The next thing I need to do is add some diagonal supports here over the nesting boxes and up there on the roof. I could figure out a way to overcomplicate this too, but instead I'm just going to use glue and regular old screws. With those diagonally bits in place, it's time to add roosting bars, nesting boxes, floors, and other stuff to build out the interior before I put the walls on, something I didn't do with the last chicken coop. Before I keep going on the interior, I flip this thing on its side so I can make and install leveling feet, because unlike my last chicken coop, this one's going to be sitting on the ground. Leveling feet are all installed. Before I flip this thing back over, I'm going to go ahead and put the foam board insulation on the underside of this chicken coop. And yes, this is going to be an insulated chicken coop. Mostly it's for the winter, but it'll also help out during the summer. Hold on, the nesting boxes are done. I did not make these off camera. I recorded making them. I just don't know what happened to the footage. Carry on. Clean out easier of all the chicken litter and poop and stuff. I was going to build a series of slide out trays for the bottom here, but since this area is so large, I think those trays would be unwieldy and more trouble than they're worth. So instead, I'm not going to build those slide out trays, and I'm going to stick to scooping out this bottom, and I need to waterproof this raw OSB. So to do that, I'm going to add these really cheap peel and stick tiles to it, and I'll also add some ledges to channel the debris to make scoop out easier. Whoops, looks like I forgot to hit record. I installed these ledges to make clean out easier, and now I'm going to do it up top. You may have noticed on the top floor here, I didn't put any stick down floor tiles. That's because on the top, I am going to make slide out trays. It's smaller and it makes more sense up here. And to waterproof the bottom of these trays, I used more peel and stick flooring tiles. And I ran out of the original, so I had to go get some more, and they don't match. Even though these are going to be covered with pine shavings and chicken poop, it still bothers me that they don't match. I need the roof section over the nesting boxes to be hinged so I can lift it up and out of the way to have access to eggs and stuff. But I don't know how I'd put a hinge right in the middle of a section of roof, or even in the back corner of a section of roof, without creating the potential for rainwater leaks. In addition, I also need to have access to this back wall, have it flip open in some way, so I can have access to these slide-out trays to clean out the top of the coop. So instead of making two independent hinged panels, what I'm going to do is join them together as one unit that all together flips up and out of the way, like this. Not like this one, though. I put the hinge too low in this one. The angle of each one of these diagonals is slightly different, so I need to measure the angle of each one with a bevel gauge. Now to do that 3 more times. Now I'm going to go seemingly out of order and start putting walls up. But rather than doing any tedious marking, measuring, and cutting, I'm just going to slap the walls in place, screw them on, and then trim off the excess using the vibrating saw as a flush trim saw. I don't have enough hinges right now, but that's how it's going to work. Although I haven't shown any of it, I have been adding insulation as I'm going. All right, first test. Does it open? Yes. Is it going to stretch the crap out of that weather stripping? Uh-oh. Well, that didn't work. Yeah, this isn't going to work. I'm going to have to find a different solution. I even moved it down a smidge, which for you metric folk is 2.35 Scotias, and it did nothing, so I'm going to have to find something else. After I get this last panel screwed in place, it would be insanely difficult to crawl in through the access hatch in the back and install the foam insulation panels. So I've gone ahead and cut them out and stuck them in place. Then I'm going to smear construction adhesive, and then after I screw the panel in place, I can crawl in through the access hatch in the back and just press them in place. All the paneling is up, but none of the trim, which means it's a perfect time for paint. There. I wish it was that easy. Question for you. If when this is done, it has more than 2 doors, is it still a chicken coop? The answer is yes. If BMW can call this a coop and Mercedes can call this a coop, then nothing means anything. I can call this whatever I want to. It's a chicken shooting brake. Trim. As you can see, I started putting on this aluminum trim here, but it looks like garbage, so I'm going to rip it off and do what I should have done to begin with, which is make my own trim out of wood. I finished fitting the trim, I've patched all the nail holes, and I've done some touch-up painting, and now it's done. Areas like this were really fiddly, because not only did I have to work around a hinge, I also had to make sure there was clearance so nothing bound up when I opened up the door. It does look a little bit weird, but I think it looks just fine. And remember, this is a house for chickens. Next up, roofing. For roofing on the chicken coop, I'm using steel roofing panels, which unfortunately means cutting steel roofing panels, which is a task I hate. Ow! Oh, there's the slicing. Ow! I made my life easier. I went out and bought offset tin snips, right and left-handed ones. Still gonna suck though. Got this gap here where the nesting box cover hinges up, and I've been trying to figure out for a while how to seal this from rainwater and still allow it to hinge properly. I think I finally figured out what I'm gonna do. It's a little unsightly, but it works without pinching, and I think it'll look a heck of a lot better once I put some blue paint on it to make it match with everything else. Doors and windows. For the sides, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to have a big access door right here and another slightly bigger one down here, but for the front, I had less of a clear idea of what to do. So I employed the laser And I cut out these shapes out of poster board. I wasn't really sure what to do for the front, so I thought I would just cut out a bunch of shapes and stick them in place to see what looks right. And this is the layout I've decided on. 4 windows up top, 2 at the bottom, and underneath those 2 windows at the bottom, 2 big access doors. And these 2 windows are fake. The reason why they're fake is because I don't need that much daylight going into the top story of the chicken coop, but without something there, this would just be a wide open empty space. So I needed something there to break it up. Fake windows. The trim pieces for the windows and doors are going to be joined together with bridle joints. To facilitate making those bridle joints, I threw together this quick tenon jig that slides over my table saw fence. Now to add paint. Ta-da! When I moved into my shop, there were these stacks of glass strips in the wall cavities, so that's what I'm going to be using for the small windows. For the big fake windows, I had this big sheet of glass I harvested from an old touchscreen panel that I've painted black on one side. That sounded different. I bet this is tempered glass. Let's try breaking it. If it doesn't break, then it's tempered. Hey look, it's tempered glass. Crap! Since the glass I had on hand was tempered, aka indestructible, I've had to go out and buy glass. Like a non-hoarder. As you can see, I've already painted it. Off camera, I did a few finishing touches. I added touch-up paint to anywhere that needed it, including this seal here, which looks much better color matched with the rest of the chicken coop. By the way, for this hinge down here, I didn't go with the complicated rubber seal thing like I did up top. Instead, I just have a piece of weather stripping wedged between the 2 halves. This wouldn't work up top, which is why I went with the more complicated solution. We'll have to see how this holds up over time. I added a window sash lock down here to both sides to keep this flap shut when I don't need access to it, which is most of the time. I added latches and handles to all 4 of these side doors here in the form of these screen door handles, and they work pretty well. I also added foam weather stripping around the inside edges, again to all 4 of the side doors. I didn't add any sort of latch to either of these 2 bottom doors here because they're going to remain open 99% of the time. In fact, I think the only time I will ever close either one of these doors is maybe during a really cold period in the winter. Now, given that fact, while they're open, they're really ugly, so I might want to do something about that. And I was going to add the central vanes to these windows like you saw in the template mock-up that I cut on the laser, but I think they look fine as is, so I'm going to leave them. The top section of this new chicken coop is just about the same size as the entirety of my current chicken coop. As you can see, 2 roosting bars, and the floor is made up of slide-out trays to make clean out easier. I expect the vast majority of the chickens to sleep up here since chickens like to roost as high as possible. And there's no direct access doors to this top section. Instead, they'll have to make their way up from the bottom, hop up onto a roosting bar, and then up through this big old hole in the floor. I made the floor only extend about 3/4 of the way across the coop. That's how they'll have to get up here, and like I said, I expect most of them to spend their nights up here on these roosting bars. Probably even try to get up top at some point. This entire section swings up, and I can prop it up with a stick, so I can have access to all 8 of the nesting boxes and all 3 of the slide-out trays up here to make clean out of the top section a heck of a lot easier. This lower section is much larger. It's mostly for the big waddly birds, the turkeys and the geese. I hope the turkeys will use this roosting bar up here, although we'll have to see. I expect some chickens will want to use that, and of course the nesting boxes are in here as well. I expect the turkeys to use these nesting boxes, but the goose, she'll probably lay her eggs down here in one of these cavities. And this whole back wall hinges up so I have easy access to the entire bottom area for cleaning. Now you may be wondering, how do I plan to move this thing? I can lever up one end with the dolly here, and then once I get that off the ground, I can slide in these two boards with wheels bolted to them. It is, not surprisingly, a very heavy chicken coop at this point. All right, now it's on those two wheels. Now I can just lever it up on the other side and take it wherever I want to go. Very, very slowly. And this worked great! Briefly. Oh God, I just had an accident. Oh, you can see what happened. As you might imagine, I was ready to give up at this point, but regardless of how I wanted to continue, I couldn't just leave it on its face in my driveway. So I screwed some anchors into concrete and yanked on it with my pickup. Brilliant. Then I upgraded to a slightly sturdier anchor and flipped it upright with no issue. What's the right thing to do when you encounter resistance? That's right, push harder. You know, I would have rather not dropped it on its face, but considering it's not that bad. None of the glass is broken. The only thing that is scratched is the trim on that side, on the bottom, which can be fixed with a little bit of sanding and some touch-up paint. And the only thing that has major damage is obviously the doors. They swung open while it was falling because there's no latches on them, and then they just got obliterated by the weight of this massive coop on top of them. This one shattered into pieces. That one was still attached until I tried to move it, then it just fell right off. The protruding edge of this roof up here took the brunt of the impact and somehow miraculously survived. So I can just trim off about an inch of that on the end and that will be good to go. Unfortunately, there is structural damage. You can see this crack coming from the corner of the opening right here, and this same crack exists on the other side as well. What happened is these dog bone inlays split and separated on impact because they are not impact rated. They're easy enough to fix. I'll just have to drive some long lag screws in from the outside to pull that board back in. But it is something I have to pay attention to. The joint all the way down on the end there is what separated the most. That's where that big crack is. And I made new doors, but I didn't just remake them as they were. Since they got ripped off, I took it as an opportunity to redesign them, because as I mentioned before, these doors are going to be open 99% of the time, and before, when they were open, they looked weird. There was exposed foam and exposed wood. It didn't look right. So now, the frame is stuck in place, and the doors open inward. So now they're aesthetically pleasing, open or closed, and they can stay open all the time. Am I putting too much thought into the aesthetics of a chicken house? Maybe. I also took the time to rethink how to move this stupid thing around, because if I had to guess, this chicken house weighs about 1,000 pounds, so moving around with this proved to be nearly impossible. So I bolted on a trailer tongue. I stole a hitch from my tiller so I can attach this to the mower and pull it around like that. It'd be a lot easier. So now this is officially a chicken mobile home for stupid birds that are not going to appreciate all this work that I'm putting into their house. Oh my God, it works. I spent 6 months from start to finish on this chicken coop. As a rough guess, I'd say it took me 3 to 4 weeks of actual work and about $2,000 in materials, give or take. If someone paid me to make this for them, I'd probably charge them $6,000 or more. Not that I'd ever do that, of course. I liked making this, but I don't want to do it again. Now I've got a little bit of an issue here. This is the chicken coop that I need to take down to make room for the new coop. It's currently bolted to the frame of what used to be a garage out here. The problem is, inside the coop are my 2 turkey hens who have gone broody, and they're sitting on a batch of eggs that are not only fertilized but developing. I cracked one open. There was a proper fetus in there. I need to get them out of this coop, but I don't want to ruin the progress they've made on these eggs. They're properly developing eggs. So I bought an incubator. Now I just need to extract the eggs out from underneath the turkeys that are rather protective. Wish me luck. Ow, 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 ow. Okay, I'm pushing you back now. Look at that! That was easy, wasn't it? Ow. You know, if it weren't 80% humidity, it'd be real relaxing working outside with the chickens. But it's 80% humidity, so I'm just coated in sweat. In the time it took me to make this coop, it went from so cold I had to bring the geese inside to so hot I don't even need water to take a shower. I'll be setting each one of the leveling feet on these concrete pavers. Again, you can't go in there. And that's it. It's in place and leveled up. Yes, there's still some more stuff I have to do, like adding fencing around it, but that's going to wait until it's not 1,000,000 degrees outside. Thanks for watching. Look at that big house that I made for you. You're going to poop right on that brand new door frame, aren't you? Ow. 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 Okay. Ow. Okay, I'm pushing you back now. Look at that! That was easy, wasn't it? Ow. No, get back. I'm stealing your eggs! Can't you deal with this? Ow. Ow. I didn't sign up for acupuncture. Ow! Ow, ow, ow! You just tried to eat my finger off! Good thing you don't have teeth. Ow, ow, ow! Ow! What did I do to do? Ow! Those dogs, they're gonna get you. I'm stealing your eggs. Ow! 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 Okay, I'm gonna take these into the incubator now. I hate you.